My name is Derek Paulson. I'm 46 years old, and I used to be a forestry supervisor. Used to be. Past tense. Because after what happened in September 2019, I couldn't go back into the woods. Not the way I used to. Not without hearing things. Seeing things. Remembering things that don't fit into any official report or rational explanation. I'm telling you this story because I need someone to understand what really happened out there. Not the sanitized version that went into the incident report. Not the explanation that got filed away and forgotten. The truth. In September 2019, I was leading a 6-person forestry crew in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon. Routine timber management project, selective cutting, disease removal, fire break maintenance. Standard work. I'd done it 100 times over 15 years. I knew those mountains. I knew how to keep a crew safe. But I didn't know what was living up there. What was watching us. What was waiting. My crew was ambushed by multiple Bigfoot creatures in a coordinated operation that lasted 3 days. We were held prisoner in our own camp. Hunted. Tested. Studied. And then, for reasons I still don't fully understand, we were released. 2 members of my crew were never the same after. One of them, Tommy, 24 years old, bright kid with his whole life ahead of him, disappeared 6 months later. Walked into those same mountains alone and never came back. The official search found nothing. But I know where he went. And I know why. I carry that weight every single day. The decisions I made. The signs I ignored. The person I failed to protect. I'm a skeptic. Or I was. I didn't believe in Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. Thought it was campfire stories and blurry photos. Thought people who claimed to see them were either lying or mistaken. I was wrong about all of it. What happened to us wasn't an animal attack. It was something far more intelligent, far more organized, and far more terrifying than anything I could have prepared for. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. If you're watching this, please hit that like button and subscribe. I know how that sounds, like I'm just another person trying to get views with a scary story. But I need people to hear this. I need a record that exists outside of sealed company files and non-disclosure agreements. I need you to listen before I lose the courage to tell it. Please, just do that for me. All right, let me take you back to September 2019. We arrived on site on September 3rd, 6 of us total. Me, the supervisor. Jake Martinez, 30 years old, 10 years of field experience, solid guy. Maria Chun, 28, our navigation and mapping specialist. Tommy Westbrook, 24, fresh out of forestry school, but eager and competent. Ron Castillo, 42, equipment specialist. And Sarah Kruma, 35, our safety officer and medic. The project was simple. 2 weeks in a remote section of the Willamette National Forest, about 40 miles from the nearest town. We were targeting dead and diseased trees, thinning overgrown areas to reduce fire risk, creating defensible space. Standard government contract work. The area was remote but not inaccessible. We had 2 trucks, a mobile equipment trailer, 2 sleeping trailers, and enough supplies for 3 weeks if we needed to extend. Cell service was non-existent that far in, but we had satellite phones for emergencies. The first 2 days were normal. We set up base camp, surveyed the work area, began the cutting schedule. The weather was perfect, clear skies, mild temperatures. The forest was beautiful, old growth mixed with newer stands, dense but manageable. Day 3, things started getting strange. It began with small things. Tools going missing. Jake's chainsaw disappeared from where he'd set it down during a break. We found it 2 hours later on top of a rock outcropping about 30 feet up. No way it got there by accident. No way wind or an animal moved it. Ron's climbing gear vanished from the equipment trailer overnight. We found it the next morning arranged in a perfect circle around our campfire pit. Not scattered. Arranged. Deliberately. Then the footprints started appearing. Every morning, we'd find them circling our camp. Enormous prints. Maybe 18 inches long, 5 distinct toes. Deep impressions in the soft forest floor. The stride length was impossible. 6, 7 feet between steps. Whatever was making them was huge and moving through the forest at night while we slept. Sarah wanted to report it. She was our safety officer, and this was clearly a safety concern. But I made the call to continue. I told myself it was probably a bear, even though bear prints looked nothing like what we were seeing. I was under pressure. We had a schedule, a budget, a contract to fulfill. I didn't want to be the supervisor who called off a project because of weird footprints. That was my first mistake. Day 4, the sound started. At night, from the forest around our camp, we'd hear voices. Not animal sounds, voices. Human voices, or close enough. Calling our names. Derek. Derek. Faint, distant, like someone lost in the woods, calling for help. The first time I heard it, I grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate. Nothing. Just darkness and trees. But I heard it again, from a different direction. Then again. Then Maria's name. Then Tommy's. Always distant, always moving, always just out of sight. We started sleeping in shifts, keeping watch. But the voices only came when everyone was together. When we had someone outside on watch, the forest went silent. Day 5, September 7th, everything changed. We were working in a ravine about a mile from base camp. Dense timber, steep slopes on both sides, a small creek at the bottom. Good area for selective cutting. Lots of dead standing timber that needed to come down. It was just afternoon. Clear day, good visibility. We were spread out over about 100 yards, each person working their assigned section. Then the rocks started falling. Not falling, being thrown. Fist-sized stones, coming from the slopes above us, arcing down with force and accuracy. One hit Ron's hard hat, so hard it cracked the shell. Another landed 2 feet from where Maria was standing. Rockfall. I shouted. Everyone out of the ravine. But it wasn't rockfall. Rockfall is chaotic random. This was targeted. As we moved, the rocks followed us. When we stopped, they stopped. And then the screaming started. I've heard a lot of animal sounds in 15 years of forestry work. Bear roars, cougar screams, elk bugles. This was none of those. It was louder than any animal I'd ever heard, a vocalization that seemed to vibrate your chest cavity, that made your ears ring. And it was coming from multiple directions. Not one creature, several. Coordinated, creating echoes that made it impossible to tell where they actually were. My crew panicked. I don't blame them. I was panicking too. We ran back toward base camp, abandoning equipment, just focused on getting to safety. We broke out of the tree line into our camp clearing, and that's when we saw them. 5 figures. Standing at intervals around the perimeter of our camp, maybe 50 yards out, positioned at the main access points. Each one at least 7 feet tall, covered in dark hair, standing perfectly still. Watching us. Not charging. Not approaching. Just standing there, blocking our exits. Into the trailers. I shouted. Everyone inside, now. We scrambled into the 2 sleeping trailers, slammed the doors, locked them. 6 of us split between 2 spaces designed for 3 each. We crowded around the small windows, trying to see what was happening outside. The creatures didn't move, didn't come closer, just stood there, sentries, for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Then, as the sun started dropping toward the horizon, they melted back into the forest. Just stepped backward into the tree line and vanished. What the hell was that? Tommy's voice was shaking. What the hell were those things? Sasquatch, Maria whispered. Those were Sasquatch. That's not real, Ron said, but his voice had no conviction. We'd all seen them. There was no explaining it away. I grabbed the satellite phone. Dead. No signal, not even the emergency beacon. I tried the radio. Static. Both vehicles, dead batteries, even though they'd been fine that morning. We were cut off. We wait until morning, I said. Stay inside. Stay quiet. In the morning, we assess and figure out a plan. That night was the longest of my life. They came back after dark. We could hear them moving around the camp, heavy footsteps, low vocalizations, not quite words, but complex sounds, like they were communicating with each other. They knocked on the trailer walls, hard enough to make the whole structure shake. Then the mimicry started. Help me. A voice from outside, high-pitched, distressed. Please, someone help me. It sounded exactly like Sarah. But Sarah was sitting right next to me, frozen in fear. Don't respond, I whispered. Nobody makes a sound. The voice continued, pleading, crying. Then it changed. My voice. Everyone out. Emergency. Get out now. Perfect mimicry. If I hadn't been in that trailer, if I'd been outside, I would have sworn it was me talking. The sounds continued all night. Voices, knocking, footsteps circling the trailers. Once, we heard what sounded exactly like a child crying, heartbreaking sobs that made Tommy put his hands over his ears. It's not real, Maria kept saying. It's not real. They're imitating. They're testing us. When dawn finally came, the sound stopped. We waited an hour past sunrise before cautiously opening the doors. The creatures were gone, but they'd left evidence of their visit. Our equipment was destroyed, not broken randomly, dismantled. Methodically, chainsaws taken apart piece by piece. Fuel cans opened and emptied in geometric patterns. Food supplies removed from storage and arranged in circles and lines. Both vehicles had all 4 tires cut, not punctured, sliced cleanly through the sidewalls with something incredibly sharp. And in the dirt in front of my trailer, symbols. Drawn with something pointed, a stick or claw. Triangles, circles, parallel lines. Deliberate, intentional, not random marks. Designs. They're keeping us here, Jake said. Whatever they are, they don't want us to leave. We hike out, I decided. Maria, Jake, you two are the best hikers. Take water, minimal gear, and make for the nearest ranger station. 40 miles, maybe 2 days on foot. The rest of us wait here, conserve supplies, and maintain defensive positions. It was the best plan I could come up with. Looking back, it was also incredibly naive. Jake and Maria left at first light on day 6, September 8th. We watched them disappear into the forest, heading east, toward the nearest road. They came back 4 hours later. Both were scratched, bleeding, terrified. Maria's arm had deep gouges that Sarah immediately began treating. Jake's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold a water bottle. They herded us, Jake said. Every time we tried to go east, they'd appear, blocking the path. Not attacking, just standing there. So we'd go around, and they'd appear again. They pushed us in circles for 3 hours until we ended up right back here. Maria was crying. One of them grabbed my arm when I tried to force past. It didn't hurt me. It could have broken my arm easily, but it just held me. Squeezed just hard enough for me to stop fighting. Then it let go and pointed back toward camp. It wanted me to return. The scratches on her arm weren't violent. They were controlled, precise. A message. We were prisoners. That night, day 6, they came into the camp. We were locked in the trailers again, watching through the windows. 5 creatures, moving with purpose through our camp. No longer staying at the perimeter. Coming in, examining everything with what looked like curiosity. One of them picked up a flashlight, turned it on and off repeatedly, studying it. Another sat down at our meal prep area and started sorting through cooking utensils, organizing them by size. A third stood guard, facing outward, clearly watching for what? Threats? Others of their kind? And one, the largest, easily 8 feet tall, crouched in the middle of the clearing and started drawing in the dirt with a stick. I managed to pull out my phone. The battery was at 6%. I started recording through the small window gap. For 43 seconds, I captured this creature drawing. Complex geometric shapes. Triangles within circles. Parallel lines that formed patterns. Deliberate, methodical, intelligent. Then my phone died. But I saw it. We all saw it. This wasn't an animal making random marks. This was communication, art, intelligence. The creatures left before dawn. Disappeared back into the forest like ghosts. Day 7. We were running low on food. The water situation was okay. The creek was nearby. But we'd been rationing meals, and stress was eating through our energy fast. That morning, we found something new outside the trailers. A pile of food. Fresh food. Wild berries, edible roots, and what looked like dried meat, probably deer or elk, carefully prepared. Arranged neatly on a flat rock near the camp entrance. "It's a trap," Ron said. "They're baiting us." "Or it's an offering," Tommy said quietly. "Maybe they're trying to help?" "I want to pause here and ask you something. What do you think these creatures wanted from us? Why did they keep us there without killing us? Why did they bring us food? Drop your theories in the comments. I need to know what other people think because 6 years later, I still don't have a good answer. We argued for an hour about whether to accept the food. We were hungry. We didn't know how much longer we'd be trapped. But eating food from unknown sources, from creatures holding us captive, I made the decision. I went outside, alone against everyone's protests, walked to the pile of food, and ate some of the berries in full view of the forest. I could feel them watching. Couldn't see them, but knew they were there. The berries were fine. Fresh, clean, actually delicious. I ate a handful, then brought the rest inside to share. Nothing happened. No sickness, no poison. It was just food. 12 hours later, they brought more. More berries, more roots, fresh water in a large leaf folded into a makeshift container. And Tommy did something that changed everything. He walked outside, stood in the clearing, and made a gesture, hands together, then spreading apart. "Thank you." One of the creatures emerged from the tree line. Not fully, just far enough to be seen. And it mimicked the gesture. Hands together, spreading apart. Tommy started crying. "They're trying to talk to us," he said. "They're trying to communicate." Over the next 6 hours, Tommy had a conversation, if you can call it that, with these creatures. Gestures, simple patterns drawn in the dirt, showing and mimicking. It was primitive, limited, but it was undeniably communication. He learned 3 things. They acknowledged our presence with a specific gesture. They indicated the forest with sweeping motions, territory. And they made a pushing gesture, then a circle, then pointed at us. Maria interpreted. "Stay in the circle. Don't wander. Respect the boundary." "They're setting rules," Jake said. "They're telling us how to coexist." Day 8, September 10th. The creatures didn't come to camp that morning. The forest was silent, eerily silent. By noon, we realized the perimeter guards were gone. We walked to the edge of camp. No creatures. No sounds. No signs. "They're letting us go," Maria whispered. "The blockade is over. I don't know why. I don't know what changed. Maybe we passed some test. Maybe they decided we weren't a threat. Maybe they were satisfied we understood the message." We packed what we could carry and started hiking out. 11 hours of hard walking, following old logging roads and game trails. Not once did we see or hear the creatures. But I felt watched the entire time. Protected, almost. We reached a rural highway just after midnight. Flagged down a truck driver who looked at our torn clothes, exhausted faces, and wild eyes like we were ghosts. He drove us to the nearest town. The aftermath was worse than the experience in some ways. The forestry company sent investigators. They recovered our equipment, documented the damage, and filed an incident report that classified it as wildlife encounter, no fatalities, project abandoned. They made us sign non-disclosure agreements, threatened us with breach of contract suits if we went public, and offered generous severance packages if we kept quiet. Most of us took the money and tried to move on. But you don't move on from something like that. Maria developed severe PTSD. She can't work in forests anymore. Can't even go camping. She moved to Phoenix, somewhere with no trees, no wilderness. Last I heard, she's doing better, but she still has nightmares. Jake became obsessed. Spent every free moment researching Sasquatch encounters, trying to understand what happened to us. The company fired him after he tried to return to the site without authorization. He runs a podcast now, interviews other witnesses. I haven't talked to him in 3 years. Ron and Sarah adapted better. Both still work in forestry, different companies, different states. We don't stay in touch. And Tommy changed the most. He became withdrawn, almost reclusive. He'd talk about how the creatures had been teaching us something during those 3 days. How they'd demonstrated intelligence, patience, and restraint. How they'd chosen to let us live when they could have easily killed us. He said he understood something fundamental during that encounter. Something about coexistence, about respecting boundaries, about recognizing intelligence in forms we don't expect. In March 2020, 6 months after the incident, Tommy drove back to Oregon. He left a note for his parents. "I need to go back. I need to understand more. Don't worry about me." He walked into the Cascade Mountains alone and never came back. The official search lasted 2 weeks. They found his truck at a trailhead. Found some of his gear about 5 miles in. After that, nothing. No body, no signs of struggle, no indication of what happened. But I know where he went. He went back to that clearing. Back to those creatures. And I think they were waiting for him. I think he's still there. That's the weight I carry. I was the supervisor. I should have evacuated the crew sooner. Should have taken the signs seriously. Should have protected Tommy better. Should have prevented him from going back. But here's the thing that haunts me even more than the guilt. Those creatures weren't monsters. They were intelligent. They were organized. They communicated with each other and with us. They could have killed us at any point during those 3 days, but they chose not to. They captured us, studied us, tested our reactions, and then released us unharmed. It was a message, a warning. This forest is ours. You are tolerated here, but only if you respect the boundaries. Only if you acknowledge that you're not the apex species. Only if you understand that intelligence and consciousness exist in forms you don't recognize. I went back to that area once. 2 years after the incident, alone during the day. I didn't go far, just to the edge of where our camp had been. I found symbols carved into tree bark. Fresh carvings. The same geometric patterns I'd seen the creature draw in the dirt. Triangles, circles, parallel lines. Something is still there. Still marking territory. Still communicating in a language we barely understand. And sometimes, late at night in my home 300 miles away, I hear knocking on my exterior walls. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. The same pattern the creatures used during the siege. I don't go outside when I hear it. I don't investigate. I just acknowledge it and go back to bed. Because I understand now what Tommy understood. We're being watched. We're being monitored. And as long as we respect the boundaries, as long as we don't push too far, we're allowed to coexist. But if we don't listen, if we keep ignoring the signs, keep destroying habitat, keep pretending we're alone in these forests, the next encounter might not end with everyone walking away. I have that 43-second video. The one showing the creature drawing symbols in the dirt. The forestry company confiscated my phone, but I'd backed everything up to cloud storage before we left on that project. I've never released it. Never showed it to anyone outside my crew. Until now. I'm attaching it to this video. You can see it for yourselves. Clear footage, close range, undeniable. A creature that shouldn't exist, demonstrating intelligence that shouldn't be possible, communicating in ways we're only beginning to understand. Tommy was right. They were trying to teach us something. And I think I finally understand what it was. We're not alone. We've never been alone. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we stop treating these forests like they're empty wilderness waiting to be exploited, the better chance we have of surviving what comes next. Because they're out there, watching, waiting, deciding whether we're worthy of sharing this planet with them. My name is Derek Paulson. I was a forestry supervisor until Bigfoot ambushed my crew in September 2019. 2 of my people were permanently traumatized. 1 disappeared trying to go back. And I live every day knowing I failed to protect them. But I also live every day knowing that somewhere in those mountains, something intelligent, something ancient, something we don't have words for yet is watching humanity and making decisions about our future. If you work in the forests, pay attention to the signs, the symbols, the patterns, the warnings. They're trying to communicate. They're trying to set boundaries. And if we don't listen, if we don't respect what they're telling us, then what happened to my crew will seem like mercy compared to what comes next. Please, share this video. Like it. Subscribe. Get this story out there before it gets buried again. People need to know what's living in our forests. What's watching us. What's waiting. Thank you for listening. And if you're Tommy, if somehow you're out there and you can see this, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. But I hope you found what you were looking for. I hope they accepted you.